For those of you out there who thought yesterday gave you all the techniques you thought you would ever need to have, to be able to study well and to study effectively, there's more. Yesterday we talked about distributing your study time, mixing your subjects, practice makes perfect. All these things are really, really great ways to improve the way you learn and keep the information in your brain, keep yourself, pretty smart.
Yeah.
You are, Mike. I would call you smart.
Okay. But no, I think a lot of these test preparation tips that we've given people, tactics and strategies, are really, really useful. And not just for preparing for, exams and stuff like that. A lot of things in life can be quite intimidating, whether it's, preparing for an exam, preparing for a presentation at your job.
Driving tests.
Maybe driving tests, things like that, or even planning something huge.
Yeah.
I know that there's been times I've been wanting to take a big holiday, but then you're like, I got to do the plane tickets and then the hotel and the rental car and make an itinerary, a schedule of what we'll do and where we'll go and how we'll get there. And then, if you do it a few weeks before the trip, it's going to be much more stressful than if you start 6 months before and kind of do it in bite-sized pieces, distribute your study time,
so
your planning time.
So you're not so intimidated.
So you're not so intimidated. Mix things up a little bit, and the more you do it, the more confident and comfort you will feel in doing it. The more you avoid it, the harder and more stressful it's all going to be. Logical, really, sensible, always, and stuff we know, definitely, but not always things we do and actually put into practice. So today we're going to learn some more great study techniques, including one of my favorite, visual aids. I like those visual aids.
Well, let's look at our visual content right now. Let's listen to the whole article one time. In addition to planning your study schedule and practicing regularly, there are other active methods that can improve your learning. Try visual aids. Let's face it, simply reading textbooks isn't enough to guarantee that the information will stick. Active study methods, like incorporating visual aids, are more effective. Research has shown that images can significantly boost our memory. Take advantage of pictures in your materials or redraw diagrams and concept maps from memory to emphasize key points of a chapter. This method utilizes your brain's pattern recognition abilities, making comprehension and recall of information more efficient. Ask more questions. Instead of merely memorizing facts, delve deeper by asking why or how about your study material. This method, supported by experts, places new information within a larger context to enrich understanding. For example, don't just memorize the dates of the American Revolution. Try to understand why events unfolded and their significance. Exploring the reasons behind the colony's quest for independence and its impact on the nation's future deepens your understanding of history and enhances recall. Test yourself. One of the best ways to study is regularly quizzing yourself, such as by covering definitions in your notebook and recalling each term's meaning. Another highly recommended strategy is to test yourself as your teacher might. This helps you think critically about what your instructor emphasizes. Additionally, you can explain concepts to study partners or record yourself as if you were teaching a class. This will help identify confusing areas, encouraging you to seek answers and retain the information. By integrating these strategies, you'll not only study smarter, but also save time. So give these methods a try and watch your academic performance soar. So, Mike, you were talking about visual aids.
I was indeed. So that's actually the next tip we have for you, the first one in today's article. Let's get into it. So, of course, we're talking about smart study techniques to boost your learning. That's our title still. In addition, today's article begins, in addition to planning your study schedule and practicing regularly, those are the basic things we learned yesterday, there are other active methods that can improve your learning. This is also kind of a useful article because we really start with the most obvious and most effective ways to improve your learning effectiveness yesterday. And today we're looking at some of these sort of, some of the sort of side tips we would give in, things that will definitely help you out, but maybe not as important as what we talked about yesterday. For example, planning your time effectively and sort of, taking care of things early enough and not procrastinating. Those are more important than trying visual aids. But visual aids are fun. As the article says, let's face it, simply reading textbooks isn't enough to guarantee that the information will stick. If you're like me and you got a new textbook back in school, one of the first things you would do is open it and hope to see pictures and charts and graphs and other things that represent information in a visual way, because simply reading words, it's good, but you really got to concentrate, and that information might not stick as well. When we say information sticks, obviously it has something to do with remembering, but it also has a lot to do with knowing and understanding. If you know and understand something, it's a lot easier to remember it and to kind of build it into a framework of knowledge in your mind than if you're just learning random numbers and facts and figures and things like that. So allowing yourself to sort of create a mental map, a mental framework or skeleton to kind of hang all of this new information on, that is much more effective. And visual aids can really help a lot in that way.
Yeah, active study methods like incorporating visual aids are more effective, right? So you build it, you kind of intermesh it into your life. If you incorporate something, you kind of mix it in and let it join in and become a whole big togetherness of what was already there and what you join in. If you're making a cake, you have to incorporate eggs to the wet ingredients. So, for example, you might want to add a little bit of air to the cake. So you might add that to the sugar and the butter and the vanilla, and then over with the dry ingredients, you're going to incorporate them together, which can just be meaning to mix them together until it's all kind of evenly mixed out. And then you gradually incorporate the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients while mixing so that it can be very well and evenly incorporated. So these active study methods, like incorporating visual aids, they are more effective. They help you to take it in a little bit better. Research has shown that images can significantly boost our memory. Just a side note from this is the visual learning style. I've also found that some people have a verbal learning style, so maybe they listen better, they hear things better. If someone talks to them about a subject, they can do better than if they have to look at it on a page or if they have to kind of read it themselves even maybe. And some other folks find that they have a kinetic learning style, and those folks, they like to move while they learn. They don't necessarily want to sit down and hear a lesson. I had a science teacher once who, as he would give our lecture, he would walk around in a square as he talked about quasars and things like that. And he was very interesting, very in his own brain, and obviously his motion helped him to communicate in a very, very clear way, and it was an effective teaching method for him. Going back to here, it's like you want to take advantage of the pictures. We're in our visual part, visual aids. So we've got pictures in your materials, or redraw diagrams and concept maps from memory to emphasize key points of the chapter. So the diagrams would be, maybe a graph or something like that. You might have any kind of a picture that you draw can be a diagram that shows maybe a comparison between different things. Your concept map might have your big ideas that you took from what you're learning and the final result of what the whole thing is talking about. So it might be point 1, point 2, point 3 in little circular blobs. And then you have down at the bottom a triangle that says, and this is what it's all about. And these are different ways that, you can kind of emphasize those key points of a chapter and make it easier for it to stick in your brain.
Absolutely. That's how our brains work. Humans are very visual animals, right? I mean, when you think about it, our eyes are much more sophisticated than our ears or our smelling or things like that. So yeah, taking things in either by reading or by looking at pictures is definitely something our brains are designed for. It says this method, doing things with visual aids, it utilizes or uses your brain's pattern recognition abilities, making comprehension and recall of information more efficient. This is one of the things that led us, down out of the trees from apes to being, two-footed or bipedal animals. We had pattern recognition abilities, the ability to look out across the grasslands of Africa when we were, simple apes and, be able to identify where the lion is hiding, where the leopard is crouched, and where the animals that we can hunt might be living, or to look at a bush or a tree and identify where the fruit that is ready to eat can be found and things like that. So these are ancient things in our brains. Pattern recognition. Recognition is basically identifying something, knowing what something is, being able to tell one thing from another. So, for example, going back to berries, right? If you've ever been around strawberries and raspberries and blueberries, the color and the shape will allow your brain to recognize those things, right? To recognize would be the verb form of recognition. So pattern recognition abilities, bar graphs, pie charts, things like that. Those are really effective ways of learning because it presents a lot of information in a very easy to understand way for us humans. It makes comprehension and recall, or remembering information, more efficient. Comprehension, understanding the information. Recall, as I said, remembering it, calling it back, recalling it to your mind, being able to access that knowledge that you learned a few days ago and going, oh yeah, I know what that is because I have this sort of mental picture of the chart that I remember from the book.
That's right. And that is your recall, right? That's what comes back into your brain. And a lot of folks, well, this is a really great way for them to learn, visual aids. But maybe it's not the way that you like to learn. So maybe you want to find something else. Why don't you try this one? Ask more questions. So yeah, if you have all the pictures, it might really help you. But sometimes you need to ask these deeper questions. This might be really good for like trying to understand larger issues, like a period in a history of a country or a time of war and why it happened. A lot of the historical background, the social issues, the cultural issues that might have caused something, or why a specific kind of art style came to the forefront or something like that. So instead of merely memorizing facts, you're no longer just focusing on memorizing things, putting it in your memory and getting it so that it stays there forever. You're memorizing facts, details like numbers and things like that. Instead, you might want to delve deeper by asking why or how about your study material. I love this word delve. I was trying to figure out what its origin was. It's like, where does delve come from? It turns out it's like a High German word, telben or something like that, but it just means to dig with a certain kind of instrument. And so you're digging deeper. You're trying to go a little bit deeper. You're trying to understand a topic a little bit more than just the facts and the figures and the really simple things that you can memorize. And yeah, why would you need to memorize something? Well, you might need to memorize. In the old days, you needed to memorize your family's phone number, right? Because if you wanted to call home, you needed to memorize it, go to the payphone, put the money in and dial that number. These days, we don't have to do that so much because our cell phones really help us memorize everything for us. So the word memorize might slowly become an archaic word when we don't use so much anymore when it comes to things like phone numbers. Here we're looking at the why and how of your study material. This method, supported by experts, places new information within a larger context. So you're at a point now where you're trying to take your new information and figure out, how does it fit into the world around me? That's the larger context, right? It's not just what you know in your small town. It's maybe the global implications of what you're learning. And that might help you to really enrich your understanding, to make it more full, to make it more solid, to make it, more alive for you. A lot of times enrichment comes through, reading books. You might find that's a great way to enrich your knowledge, or learning a new language is a way to enrich your knowledge, to make it more rich than it was before, to make it deeper.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是3月21号 Unit 12 Small Study Techniques to Boost Your Learning 第2天的课文内容。这个单元提供听众使用学习方法。第1天介绍了3种很有效的读书方法，那包括呢，分配学习时间要妥善分配，再来就是要交替学习不同的科目，再来第3个就是要增加练习的机会，才能够熟能生巧。那第2天的内容呢，介绍另外3个读书的技巧。 那这3个以老师来看，我觉得这是更高层次的学习能力，包括自行制作视觉辅助，比方说心智图。第2个就是不要单纯死记，要懂得提问为什么，有什么影响。那第3个呢，就是要懂得自我测验，甚至于如果你有办法讲解给别人听的话，那就表示你真的学会了。好，那我们一起来看学习重点吧。那请同学看到第1段下面这里，开始我们整篇文章的第4个学习技巧 Try visual aids， 自己呢要学着去做视觉的辅助。那请同学看到第1个句子这里，那你一直在读教科书，不代表你就能够完完全全的记住这些资讯。It's not enough to guarantee that the information will stick。 好，这里 stick 当然就是这些资讯会留在你的脑里。好，再来我们看到第2个，作者告诉我们，其实我们应该要主动学习，积极学习 active study methods。 好，那怎么样算是积极学习？下面就有给出例子了，包括学习完了以后自己试着 redraw diagrams and concept maps。 那同学呢可以自己去画图表，或者观念图或心智图这一类的都是。好，那最后一个句子呢，等于为这一种读书方法下了一个总结了。那这样子的读书方法其实是利用我们大脑的 pattern recognition abilities， 那就是什么？图像识别的能力。好，那能怎样呢？可以让我们理解能力更加强，而且呢等于是让我们的大脑试着去回忆我们所学习的内容。好，再来第5个学习方法 Ask more questions。 请同学看到第2个句子，那这样子的读书方法怎么样呢？好，又是有专家背书咯。 This method supported by experts， 那就是有专家背书的。怎么样呢？ Places new information within a larger context。那这种读书方法，你多问问题的话，等于把这些新的资讯放在比较大的整个前后脉络当中，那从而呢 enrich understanding， 加深自己的理解。
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
All right, so let's look at that. It says, for example, don't just memorize the dates of the American Revolution. This sounds like a typical task in a history class. Memorize the dates of the American Revolution. When did it start? When did it end? When was the Declaration of Independence signed? The dates of the big important battles and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what they might ask you on a history test. And if you have all of those dates memorized, that's good. But it won't really last too long, and it certainly won't help you understand exactly what happened during the American Revolution. You'll be able to tell me when things happened, but you won't be able to explain why or how or what it all meant. So try to understand why events unfolded and their significance. Much more useful and much more interesting than just remembering the dates of things. It says exploring the reasons behind the colony's quest for independence and its impact on the nation's future deepens your understanding of history and enhances recall. So if you understand the whys of things, that is much more useful than understanding just the whens of things. This is something actually I experienced myself. I remember it was the second to last year of high school. We were in history class. The teacher walked in at the beginning of the school year and said, "This year there will be no dates on the test." And we all went, "Woohoo!" And we were so excited and so happy. And then he said, "No, you won't have to know the dates. You'll just have to explain to me why anything happened and what it all means." And then we went, because we knew that would end up being a lot more work. But I can still kind of explain some of this stuff, even though I studied it more than 20, 30 years ago. Because knowing the why and understanding how it fits into the bigger picture of history, that is much more effective than just being able to, reel off a bunch of dates. And this is in the quest for independence, what we're talking about here, America's quest for independence from, of course, Britain at the time. A quest is kind of like a long search for something. If you're traveling in search of something, if is in a story like Lord of the Rings, which is a classic quest tale, or Journey to the West, of course, that famous Chinese fairy tale or legend. That's a quest. But also when you go to school, when you're pursuing an education, that's a quest for intelligence and knowledge. After school, you can go on a job quest, a job search, a job hunt. You're looking for a good job, and you're not necessarily going to stop or take the first thing that comes along. So America's quest, their long journey towards independence, you can think of it that way, and the impact, the effect of the revolution on America's future. Impact is, yes, basically the effect of something. It can be when one thing hits another, right? Dinosaurs were killed by an impact on the Earth by a large asteroid, but it can also talk about something not in the real physical world, the impact of losing a job on a family, right? The effect that it might have on the family and all the changes that it might cause. This is absolutely very, very good advice. And I would also, from a cultural perspective, encourage, because I know students here are often not so confident about asking questions in class. They don't want to look silly in front of their classmates by asking the wrong question, or they feel they might be bothering the teacher in some kind of way. That is absolutely not true in Western countries. In fact, asking questions is encouraged in many classes. And if you really want the teacher to remember who you are, asking questions can be a good way. If you're in one of those big classes with 80 students, if you're always having your hand up and asking intelligent questions that show your understanding and thinking and trying to learn more, that is definitely a very effective way to get the teacher to just know you a little bit more.
So you've looked at the pictures and you've asked the questions, and maybe that's just not the way you want to get yourself, a little bit further along in your quest for knowledge. So maybe you want to try testing yourself. One of the best ways to study is regularly quizzing yourself, such as by covering definitions in your notebook and recalling each term's meaning. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? You cover up those words, you leave the words out there, you cover up the definition, and you try to read the definition. For me, what I would do is I would check off the ones I got right and leave a space for the ones I didn't and go back until I got checks on everything. Then I felt pretty solid about what I was doing. That was me quizzing myself, giving myself little quizzes. Yeah, another highly recommended strategy is to test yourself as your teacher might. I find that might be a little bit difficult, but it's highly recommended. That means that people recommend you do it. They say this is a good thing to do. If you are recommended to try something, if you are highly recommended to try something, then you're likely to try it. You might have a highly recommended book or a highly recommended movie that people say you should read or watch. You might have a highly recommended vitamin that people say you should take. They're all going to make really big differences in your life. And that's why they might be recommended. It means that people say, this is a good thing. You should try this. I've tried it. I think it's great, whether it's the movie watching or the food eating. So yeah, here it's the studying. It's a highly recommended strategy to test yourself as your teacher might. I find that to be a very, very difficult thing to do personally because you don't always know what your teacher is going to do. However, you can use an educated guess and you can give it a try, right? This helps you think critically about what your instructor emphasizes. You already know what kind of things your teacher focuses on. So you're taking a guess and you're making some critical guesses about what you think they're going to put on their test. You are analyzing what they have said and you're like, they're probably going to ask a question about this war. They're probably going to ask a question about why this person died or why this person was important. And that helps you to then test yourself and move on and learn information a little bit more deeply because you think of how you would answer it.
Absolutely, yes. Additionally, it says you can explain concepts to study partners or record yourself as if you were teaching a class. Yeah, this is making a little bit more active. You can get together and do some group work, right? Have a study session with some of your friends. That's a great way to kind of quiz each other and find out little gaps in your knowledge. Oh, I didn't know that, but this guy does. Maybe I should learn that as well. And record yourself as if you're teaching a class. I mean, really, if you can explain the concepts in the book in a clear way that shows you understand it from start to finish and all the different aspects and different things to consider, then you're doing pretty well. You should be able to do that on the exam and write a long answer to a question and that kind of thing. So that's a great way to practice. And also, as it says, this will help identify confusing areas, encouraging you to seek answers and retain the information, kind of like finding out what other people know that you weren't so aware of. You can identify confusing areas. To identify something is to know it and see it and know what it is, basically. To put a name on it, to put a label on it, basically to categorize it in some kind of way. So if you're identifying confusing areas, you're just paying attention to things that you didn't know or places where you might be a little bit weaker, right? A good coach will identify who the strong players on the team are, who might be good for this position or that position. So it's not just looking at things and knowing what they are, it's understanding how they fit into the bigger picture. And also encouraging you to seek answers, to go get more information, to fill in those gaps, to find those weak spots, and also to retain the information. In other words, remember the stuff you're supposed to know.
By integrating these strategies, you'll not only study smarter, but also save time. So give these methods a try and watch your academic performance soar. Our Chinese teacher wants to help our academic performance soar, so let's listen now.
那后面呢，就给了我们一个例子，比方如果我们在学美国的历史，了解到说美国其实是经历过独立战争之后才从大英帝国当中独立的。好，那不要只是背相关的日期人名， try to understand why events unfolded. Unfolded, 那这里指的当然就是这些事件到底为什么会发生，为什么会开展开来， and their significance, 还有这些相关事件的意义 significance。 好，接着我们就看到最后一个读书的技巧，那就是 test yourself, 要自我挑战，自我测试。好，第一个句子开宗明义就说 One of the best ways to study is regularly quizzing yourself. 常常给自己考试，那怎么考呢？后面有给例子 such as by covering definitions in your notebook and recalling each term's meaning. 那我们平常上课的时候会做笔记嘛，那等于先把笔记本里面所做的这些定义先盖住，那自己想一想，我有没有办法呢？回想起来。再来第二个方法 another highly recommended strategy. Highly recommended 也就是作者特别推崇的策略是什么？ Test yourself as your teacher might. 想想看，老师平常给我们考试的时候，有没有一定的出题的模式？老师通常会问哪些重点？那自己呢，就把这些重点好好的再复习一遍。从老师的角度来看，他可能会考什么？那为什么要这样做？ This helps you think critically about what your instructor emphasizes. 那等于呢，有助于我们并不只是单向的吸收，会脑筋灵活，而且呢，会去思考到底老师要强调的重点是什么。在第四个 additionally, 好，就是所谓的 test yourself. 除了前面所讲的这两种做法，还有第三个 additionally, you can explain concepts to study partners or record yourself as if you were teaching a class. 好，就是呢，可以讲给同学听，讲给你的学习伙伴听，或者把自己录音录下来 as if you were teaching a class. 请同学特别注意的，这里是假设语气 as if you were. 请同学把 were 画起来，我们不用 are， 为什么呢？这里是假设语气，就好像你自己在教别人。好，再来我们看第五个句子。那为什么要扮演老师的角色啊？因为呢，你在讲解的时候，你特别会看到自己的盲点，容易呢发现到底哪里呢是搞不懂的。Identify confusing areas. 有些地方本来就容易让人家头昏脑胀的，你就可以找出来，指认出来。好，最后我们看到，如果运用这些学习方法有什么好处呢？ You can watch your academic performance soar. 请把最后的这个 soar 画起来，就是你的成绩就会突飞猛进了。以上就是我们针对6个读书方法这篇文章所做的中文讲解。See you next time. Bye bye.
Mike, I feel less stupid.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you were stupid before. I'm not commenting on that. But I'm glad you feel that way.
I feel less stupid. And
That's
I think
good.
I've learned some smart techniques, smart study techniques.
Yeah, it's actually quite impressive that some of these things seem so easy. And then you'll follow them, and then suddenly you'll be in class and kind of like that golfer. You're like, I'm not lucky. I'm just not as stupid as I was before.
That's what I'm feeling, less stupid.
So that's great.
For English Digest, I'm Leah.
I'm Mike.
And I'm less stupid.
Bye-bye.
Bye.